All right, folks, that's it. It's time. I'm declaring it right now. It's officially time in the offseason where it's okay to start thinking about next season. That's right. We're talking the 2025 NFL season. You can start thinking about your fantasy teams, what your team's going to do this year, favorite bets. It is officially okay. In this episode, we're talking about one of the major premier edge rushers in the NFL. He's a young guy who was on the rise, and the last time we saw him on the field, unfortunately, he was getting carted off. So what can we expect from this primetime player coming off a major injury? Welcome, football fans, to another edition of IDP Plus. What is up, folks? I'm your host, the D-Gen Doc, and we are doing another NFL deep dive. That's right, injury deep dive series. We're going back, looking at major players in the league, offense, defense, whatever it is, big-time players coming off big-time injuries. As you notice, I'm solo tonight. My brother in arms, D-Gen Doc there, Professor Locks, he is currently looking at some whales in Alaska, enjoying some time on vacation. So I'm doing a little solo episode because want to keep talking ball with you guys. And today we are talking about none other than New York Jets premier pass rusher, defensive end, Jermaine Johnson. That is right. Unfortunately, the last time we saw him, this was the scenes. He was getting carted off. He had a major injury. It's an Achilles tendon tear, Achilles tendon rupture. For those in current times right now, the same injury Mr. Jason Tatum for the Boston Celtics just suffered a couple of nights ago. So, look, NFL injury deep dive. It's what the title says it, right? We are taking a deep dive, a look at these big time players. We're going to go through what the injury is. We'll talk recovery timelines. We'll talk what we want to look for in those aspects, kind of different options on repairs. We're going to give you an in-depth look at not only injury, so you can kind of extrapolate and use this for future players, but also Jermaine Johnson's specific situation and kind of his season outlook, and wrap up with, hey, for all my IDP players, is Jermaine Johnson someone at his ADP right now, someone you should be buying or someone you should be avoiding like the plague? So without further ado, let's get into it. And so his injury was an Achilles tendon tear or Achilles tendon rupture. So the Achilles tendon is the tendon. So a tendon is just connective tissue that connects a muscle to a bone, and specifically Achilles. Most of us are aware, but it essentially attaches your calf muscles, your gastroc, and your soleus to your calcaneus or your heel bone. Now, basically a rupture, it just means it breaks, right? It's a full tear to the point where it is no longer connected. Therefore, you can't use your calves because that connector piece is broken. This is kind of just showing you two examples of, one of these is more of at the insertion, at the actual Achilles. Sometimes it can be enough where what you're seeing there is that first picture, the bone is actually ripped off where the bone was attached. We call that an avulsion. That is a really bad case of a insertional Achilles tendon tear or rupture. And then we can also have a midsectional, or one that is kind of more midline in the tendon there, which is the second picture. So either way, this requires surgery. This is a major injury. There are some cases of a kind of non-operative approach, not really for athletes. You really don't see it too much. They don't do too well conservatively. To just expect that the Achilles tendon is going to scar tissue down, it's just not going to be nowhere near the amount of strength it is for an actual repair. So almost all of these, especially in professional athletes, will get a repair. So the Achilles tendon itself, obviously what it connects to, but it's big for power. It's allowing you to push off, and when you're running or jumping, as we talk about Jermaine Johnson and the defensive end position, obviously when you're pushing off and you're kind of getting that explosivity that you need coming off the edge. So let's actually go into the types of repairs we can have, because this is something that kind of has been coming up here. Now, recovery timeline is about 10 to 12 months typically. And when I talk about recovery timeline on this show and really kind of going forward, it is always about when can we expect that player to return to the field and actually be able to play, right? Actually be able to be, close to 100% where they can actually give it a full go. Not when they're able to run, or not then they're able to put pads on or anything like that. No. When can they actually get out to in an ever-changing, unknown environment, which is any sports field, and actually get out there and perform. And so 10 to 12 months is typically what you see. Obviously, like with any recovery timeline, the closer we are to that back end 12, the more confident you get in the guy's ability. Around 30% of players do not return from an Achilles tear, but a lot of times it has to do with, what point they're in their career and things like that. So do fully expect him to return. He's planning on returning next year. And, as in Jermaine Johnson, the injury date was week 2, September 15th, 2024 against the Titans there. So he does have a decent amount of time there. So talking about, all right, you're getting surgery, the player's getting surgery. What are the options? There's kind of a decent amount of approaches. They all stem around, okay, we're going to cut you open and we're going to somehow suture and repair the Achilles tendon back together. So there's a many different kind of ways that the surgeon can go in and do it and how they can do the sutures and yada, yada, yada. So this first one is kind of showing like a more traditional route, what you would expect here. And then the one on the right is this new Speedbridge thing, right? So, really in the medical community, it's newer. It's definitely newer, and I don't want to call it experimental, but the research isn't quite there yet as with some of the other procedures. But really, we can call this the Aaron Rodgers procedure, right? This is where it really got some notoriety because people, I mean, let's be frank, honestly, crazy people were spewing that he was going to come back in 4 months or he was going to be back for the season. If you, watched either the show from last year or follow me on X, I was telling you the whole time, please, DraftKings was offering a bet. Will he play one snap this season? Please do not take it. As far as that was going into last year when it happened. So not in 2024, but the 2023 season when he kind of famously got injured four plays into the game. So for Aaron Rodgers, he had that Speedbridge repair. And really, it is kind of a newer type of repair. And what makes it different here is the fact that due to the procedure, as you can see, they've kind of, you've got the sutures on the top, and then they've got this kind of cross bridge, this fixation here that attaches the tendon to the bone. The whole premise is that it allows for you to be weight bearing. It allows for you to be walking around and fully weight bear at week 2 in the boot, as opposed to week 8. Right. So it's typically you are not really able to put your full weight down after an Achilles tendon repair. You need some time to recover. It's usually pretty lengthy time you're in that boot. This whole point is, hey, we can get you back to full weight bearing. Therefore, it can speed up the rest of the recovery protocol. Now, this was created by a company called Arthrex or whatever, and this procedure type and the type of sutures and everything there, all that fancy stuff. If you want to go read more about it, I'm not going to do a whole thing on the Speedbridge, but I did want to mention, that is kind of the draw, right? Now, again, there's been some studies, but this is really just too new to kind of have a proof of concept outside of the one company who's selling it. And we all saw like Aaron Rodgers did not return, right? He really even didn't look completely ready when it was a whole year later going into the next season, right? So obviously the Speedbridge in theory is something that would allow for quicker recovery times because you can get that weight bearing sooner and then you can progress and go so on and so forth and you kind of do that protocol from there. They were saying, 4 to 6 months. Again, I think that's outrageously too soon. Just having to rehab some of these Achilles, they're tough. And it's not like, okay, we can get you walking. Maybe we can get you straight line running in 4 to 6 months. But we're talking about you need to be able to respond, push off of that calf. You need to be able to, whether you're a quarterback and throwing, or you need to be able to, hey, snap of the ball, I need you to push off and you do that explosive motion or explosive contraction of the calf. That is usually the mechanism of injury for these type of tears there. So just wanted to talk a little bit about the Speedbridge because it is that kind of, it's in the headlights, right? So, hey, hopefully it goes well and we see a improvement in recovery time. There hasn't really been a great proof of concept yet. It's still a bit experimental in that aspect. But I'm all game for anything we can do to get these guys back further. But, don't just think, hey, someone got a Speedbridge, they're going to be back in 6 months because we haven't really seen that yet, at least at a high level. All right, folks, we're gonna continue on. I'm gonna tell you about, hey, how do these injuries typically occur? With this mechanism of injury, it kind of hinted at it a little bit, and then we'll get more into Jermaine Johnson's case in particular. But before I do that, I gotta tell you about some of the awesome sponsors we got here at IDP Plus. Starting off with Fast Draft Fantasy. That is right, Fast Draft Fantasy. It is in the names, folks. Draft faster today. Look, we all got busy lives, and as much as we love fantasy and football, we know the guys we want to draft. We want to get into our draft, we want to lock down our guys, and we want to get out of there. All of these drafts on Fast Drafts, they're 6 rounds, 10-person teams, or 10-person leagues, excuse me, all done in under 10 minutes. Fast Drafts, they have these boosters that allow flexibility all the way up until the season. It is a great app, and we're going to make the deal even sweeter. I'm going to give you $50 for free by using promo code PlusDGenDoc. It's as simple as this, folks. Download Fast Draft, use promo code PlusDGenDoc, deposit $50, and boom, $50 free right in your account. Also want you to check out the things we got going over here on IDPplus.com. Look, IDP Plus, we are talking football 24/7, 365. We're talking UFL. We're talking college. We're talking NFL, of course, and we're talking NFL all the damn time. So check out what we got going on. There's different subscription levels that get you access to different levels of content. There's a subscriber-only Discord, so make sure you join the family, IDPplus.com today. And then the Fantasy Football Expo, one of the best parts about the offseason. If we're going to have an offseason, at least we can get an expo, a Fantasy Football Expo, where we all come out and enjoy ourselves and have a good time there. Get your tickets today at thefantasyfootballexpo.com. And plus, one of the creators of the expo, one of the huge members there, Bob Lung, get his Fantasy Football Consistency Guide for only $15 today. It's his 10th annual edition of the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide for 2025. All right, folks, let's get back to Jermaine Johnson talking about his specific case here with his Achilles tendon tear. So, injured week 2, September 15th, 2024. The way that typically these injuries happens is it's some type of quick push off or change of direction. Essentially a really quick contraction of that calf muscle to where the tendon is just not prepared to take that amount of force on it, right? So it can be a change of direction. It could be a kind of a stop and go. You typically will see that calf reverberation, that pop. That is just the tendon ruptured, right? So that calf is kind of reverberating back because their connection piece is no longer there. So that's how it typically happens. This is one of those you can see, so it's kind of easier to understand there. There's plenty of examples out there. Time from injury to week 1 of the 2025 season. Jermaine Johnson is working with 11 and a half months, which is key. This is kind of closer to that 12-month as opposed to the 10-month, right? I said 10 to 12 month. It's always a range because there's always specific variables and factors depending on the player and the rehab and how things are going with the surgery, if there's any complications, things like that. So, closer to 10 is really pushing it. That kind of gives me some pause. I'm not fully confident. Closer to 12, it's not like I think this guy's going to be immediately back, but he has a much better chance to not only get back to his pre-injury levels, but also get back to it actually during the season, right? So Jermaine Johnson coming with almost 12 months of recovery timeline is a big positive for him going into the season. He's also a younger guy. He's 26. He's going into his 4th year of his league, which is good. The more wear and tear you take, the older you get, the little bit harder it becomes to bounce back. Now, position demands. This injury, it's going to affect acceleration, deceleration, jumping ability, and cutting ability. The biggest thing for Jermaine Johnson with his position as defensive end and edge rusher is that ability to get off. That get off of as soon as the snap of the ball, you're exploding up the field and then being able to, change directions and make that bend. So for his pass rushing ability, that is where we want to kind of expect a little bit of rust as far as going into the next season. Obviously that's a big part of his game. Also his jumping ability. This is a guy who, he's a tall dude. He's a lanky dude. Let's see, what are his measurements there? He is 6'5", 262, so he's an absolute monster. And, in his 2024 or 2023 season, when he really exploded on the scene, he had 7 pass deflections, a block kick. Like, his length is a big thing, his ability to jump. So that's another area that we want to kind of be on the lookout for, that this injury can typically kind of affect there. Now, Going into this season, before we talk about, season outlook and fantasy outlook as we wrap up, I want to present a couple similar cases here. So I've got two guys here. One, fits more position, one fits more timeline. We'll go with the position first, and that is Mr. Jalen Phillips for the Miami Dolphins. So in 2023, he ruptured his Achilles. Now, he ruptured his Achilles later in the season, though, almost December, November 28th, 2023. So he only had 9.5 months of recovery time from his injury date to week 1 of the 2024 season. Now, if you were following me last year, this was someone I had giant red flags. I did not think nor think it was smart that the Dolphins would roll him out there week 1. Now, he was kind of on a snap count, whatever, but I thought he came back pretty damn soon. Now, to their credit, he did look better than I expected. He had, for the first 4 weeks, he had 6 tackles, 1 sack, 2 pass deflections. He wasn't a world beater, but he was kind of closer to his pre-injury levels than I thought he would be at that point. However, this is the risk. Jalen Phillips, week 4, tore his ACL. That can happen, right? You are so focused and coming back from a major injury where you have to relearn how to walk and run and all these different things. The body is smart. It often finds the path of least resistance, which isn't always biomechanically the best. It can kind of create some, compensation or faulty movement patterns that can then lead to stress in other areas of the body. AKA, not saying that every time you have an Achilles, you're going to have an ACL tear, but we do see this. Tre'Davious White is another example where they had an ACL tear and then they get Achilles, or vice versa, right? So that's where you have to be careful about rushing back too soon. 9.5 months, it's kind of outside of that expected 10 to 12 month window that I like to say is ready for the season, right? You're probably going to hear like 9 to 12 months on outside when they're just talking about, oh, you should be able to get back to things. But we're talking about specific professional athletes getting back to their position that they play. That's why I always say 10 to 12. And the closer we get to 12, the more confident I feel. So, that's an example where same position, but, we're talking 3 months or 2 months less of recovery time there. And that's a huge difference. Now we look at a guy like Aaron Rodgers. Now, obviously, quarterback to defensive end, positionally not the same, but he tore his Achilles, very early on, week 1. I think it was 4 plays in on 9/11 that he was coming in with a flag, had a badass entrance, and obviously 4-snap season, right? Now, he had a full 12 months until week 1 of this 2024 season. Aaron Rodgers, although looked rusty for the decent part of the year, how much is that of age? How much is that coming off this major injury? But he did play all 17 games and even had 100-plus rush yards, which isn't a ton, but, look, he's an old guy. So, that shows you that if you got the recovery time, you got a better chance of playing. Now, I get it. This is kind of one example on each side, but I just want to present this case to say, even injuries, the same diagnosis, not all created the same, right? That's why there's not just this cookie cutter, everyone with Achilles tear, that's this, right? Recovery time is a huge factor. Age is a factor. Position is a factor. Like there's these other factors there. So just want to present in those cases here. All right, let's get down to it. Let's talk his season outlook. Look, I think Jermaine Johnson is a guy who, if we look at his career, he came in his rookie year. He had 29 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and 1 block kick. 2023, he really came on the scene. 55 tackles, 7.5 sacks, a fumble recovery, an interception, a defensive touchdown. He turned that interception into a pick 6, 7 pass deflections, and a block kick. He was a guy who was really stuffing the stat sheet there. He went down early week 2, last year. I think he's going to have a little bit of a slower start coming off of this major injury, but I think he's a guy who's going to be able to come on strong, start week 6, week 8, and start to really have a nice back half of the year where he starts to produce. So I think that actually, for his 2025 fantasy outlook here, Jermaine Johnson for me is a buy. He's someone right now his ADP is around defensive lineman number 42. I just don't think there's 42 guys that are better than him at this position. I think that he's undervalued. I think that people are a little bit scared off of the injury. Again, the pros for this, He's got 11 and a half months of recovery timeline. He's a younger guy. And if you look at the pieces around him, he still plays next to Quinnen Williams, one of the best defensive tackles in the game. A lot for create some one-on-one opportunities. And then opposite him is Will McDonald, who had a 10 and a half sack year last year. So he's going to have opportunities for some one-on-ones. I think he's going to be able to use his length, not only to get after the quarterback, but again, he's blocked a kick in each of his first 2 years that he played. He had pass deflections. He had an interception, right? I think he's going to be able to stuff the stat sheet and kind of stuff your fantasy teams and get those and rack up those points that some of these other guys are not going to be able to. I mean, for example, that same site, I kind of pulled this from ESPN, and obviously IDP, it's a little bit harder to get your rankings kind of consensus of what the market is right now. But, that same kind of they ranked the top 50 defensive linemen. They had a guy like Jalen Phillips at defensive lineman number 29. I just told you, I mean, Jalen Phillips is coming off a Achilles tear straight into an ACL tear. I mean, those are two massive, massive injuries. So I think Jermaine Johnson is evaluated right now way too low. So as a synopsis here for this NFL 2025 injury deep dive, New York Jets defensive end Jermaine Johnson, right now at his ADP, he is undervalued. He is a buy opportunity. I think you want to buy the dip on Jermaine Johnson. He's got 11 and a half months of recovery time. He's a younger guy. I think he may have a little bit of a slower start first couple weeks, first 4 weeks or so. He's going to pick up steam. He's got opportunities due to Quinnen Williams and Will McDonald's next to him, and he's going to be able to get back to his form about midway through the season, and he's really going to be able to someone that you can kind of find as a sleeper, especially the back half of the season. So, I am higher than market on Jermaine Johnson. I would not be scared off by the Achilles tendon rupture. It is a major injury, but he's got a lot of recovery time, and I think they're going to be able to ramp him back up to where, again, week 6, week 8, he's really hitting the ground running. All right, folks, that is it for this NFL injury deep dive. Again, a solo episode. Hopefully soon, Derek and I can get back on the snide and get back to doing these as a tandem. He should be back next week as long as he didn't go overboard there in the Alaskan cruise line. All right, folks, look, we are doing dynasty rankings. Like I said, if you're into watching and betting football right now, check out UFL. I do a UFL weekly episode giving out my game breakdowns and best bets there. Only a couple weeks left, 3 weeks regular season, 2 weeks of playoffs. So make sure you hop in there and check out all the other great things we got over on IDP Plus. Look, we are talking football 24/7. It is officially okay for you to get excited. We're only a couple months away. So start revving up those engines. Get ready for the 2025 NFL season. All right, folks, from the DGen Doc here at IDP Plus, I am out of here.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.